I will go first to Mr.
Hello, I'm Nick Mosley. I'm here partly because Mayor Leonard asked for community volunteers some time ago, and I stepped up and volunteered my services. I've lived on Bowen since 2018, been visiting since the 1980s, and my wife is mobility challenged, so I thought to make a contribution.
Thank you very much.
And I'm Counselor Allison Morse, and I'm filling in, Sue Ellen Fast, Counselor Sue Ellen Fast was the liaison or council member, and she announced that she couldn't continue, so I said I would fill the role for the end of the term. Yeah. Lots of history of what's been going on in Bowen, and so if you've got history questions, I can answer a lot of them.
I was going to serve with the municipality since there was a municipality.
Yeah.
My name is Tina Nielsen. I'm the chief librarian at Bowen Island Public Library, at least for a couple of more months. And I am here as a staff resource person representing the library as we share the same advisory committee, the library and the municipality.
I'm Christina Callie. I've been a staff component of the Accessibility Advisory Committee for about the last year. Previously as my role as interim HR sorry, coordinator, and now as temporary strategic initiatives officer and supporting the implementation of the accessibility plan. Jessica, I'll pass to you.
Hello, I'm Jessica. Jessica Gladys, and I have been living on Bowen for about 6 years. I'm blind, or I have a little bit of vision, but not very much. I also have, there's some mental health challenges, particularly obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's, you know, and I think a lot about accessibility. I care a lot about accessibility for the things that I face, but I also have a big interest in accessibility for groups that I'm not a part of too. So I'm always interested in learning and being part of making things work for everybody. And I'm also the representative on the committee from the Canadian Organization of the Blind and Deafblind.
Yeah, I'm Anna Maria. I'm a pediatrician. I'm here on Christina Callie's invitation. Worked with her previously. Haven't really thought about this. I think I am like a challenger of ableism in all of its forms through the work I do in community. I've been living on Bowen for a year. Graduated from West Bend Secondary in 1993. I used to come here back then. It was very different. Yeah, I'm here to like listen and to know how I can provide what I know to support the community.
Well, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
I'm Steph Short. I'm the Deputy Corporate Officer and Committee Coordinator. So I'm here to help you with all the navigating the committee process at the municipality, and blessed to be a part of this group. It's been an amazing journey so far. I'm looking forward to the next steps.
And I would like to now go to Zoom where we have Marnie. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Would you like to introduce yourself next?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Marnie Robinson. Apologies for my scratchy voice. I have a very bad cold. I've been living on Bowen for 6 years, and for the last 5 years, I've been working for an architecture firm that focuses on public buildings and how to make them more accessible and inclusive. I'm a Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification professional, am very interested in how we make the built environment more accessible and inclusive for everybody.
Thank you, and a big welcome goes out to you as well. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
Are you able to hear us?
Kathy?
Yeah, you are cutting out quite a lot. This is great to experience how poor the audio is for people on Zoom. Tina had a good voice. Anyway, I am Kathy Pecora Fuller. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. And I am returning from the previous committee. I am on the board of Sky. Clinically, I am an audiologist. So my real focus is on hearing and communication accessibility. And I, in Sky, I'm involved in healthy aging. So basically, it's the intersection that many older people have between hearing, vision, cognition, mobility, the combination of disabilities that affects their functioning in everyday life, and how we can make life better for older people on Bowen. So that's what I am looking forward to working on.
Excellent. And last but certainly not least, Xerxes.
Hi, I'm Xerxes O, Planner One and staff resource for this committee. I have a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder, and I also have a personal and professional interest in just planning for accessibility and neurodiversity.
Well, also welcome to the committee. Thank you, everyone. We'll go into item 5.1. It's just a very brief history of how we got here. And I'm getting into some of the interesting meat and potatoes. If you're vegetarian, that's okay. We'll discriminate. Gonna be a little bit here in this committee for everybody. So how we got here, I think I'll summarize this in terms of trying to make sure we stay on time. But to put it in a nutshell, Bowen for over a century has had leadership within the province when it comes to accessibility. It's very much baked into the culture of our island. So when the province came knocking in 2021 and said there's a accessibility committee requirement coming down the line, I don't think we were too concerned, but it came into implementation in 2023, and we were ready as a municipality to take that on. We did a fair amount of engagement through 2023 through a survey, in-person discussion, and following months after that, we're putting together our official accessibility action plan. And the library's been working on one of those as well. And these are plans that guide the municipality and the library to be more accessible in ways that they can be more accessible and make meaningful systemic change across the whole system. That plan has recently been completed for the municipality and had gone through the process where it is now going to be implemented. So the task for this committee going forward is the implementation of this plan, as well as providing input on that, as well as providing input to council on referrals, as we'll see later on in the meeting today. And also looking to the future of revisions to this plan, because this plan will get updated as things change. Not only does technology change, but community needs change as the island continues to grow and morph from, I think Anna Maria put it well, when she would come here previously, it was very different than it is today. And it will continue to be different every year that goes forward. And that will give us new accessibility challenges, but also new accessibility solutions. And staying at that intersection and keeping our position as a leader in this space will be one of the tasks of this committee will work on. I'd like to open it up to any of our wonderful staff here who may want to add any their thoughts.
Xerxes will speak to the plan after Tina, and Christine will talk to the implementation after Xerxes. So why don't we go to Tina?
Sure. Okay. So Tina, can I call on you for item 5.2, please?
Absolutely, and thank you for making space on the agenda for me. I thought it was important to just especially for new members of this committee, to understand why there is a separate accessibility plan for the library. So although we share the same committee, it made sense that there's only two organizations on Bowen that are required under the legislation to conform to the accessibility legislation. That's the municipality and the library. It didn't make sense to have two separate committees trying to do similar work. So we have asked if sort of the library could join in with the municipality's accessibility committee, and you represent the library as well to some degree. So after that, we are required to have an accessibility plan as a library, and we certainly could have simply adopted the municipalities and had a little section about the library, but we felt that it was important that there are some significant differences between us. The municipality is large and covers many, many areas that the library never approaches, from roads to infrastructure to sewer to water to et cetera, transportation, crosswalks, things that are not on the library's radar, so to speak. So we felt that it was important to create a library-specific plan that really dealt with the library's scope and our very specific needs, which are perhaps a little bit different than the municipality's larger responsibilities. So we, of course, don't do this in isolation. We do it with the help and support of this committee, who provided so much of the research and background that informed the library's plan. And I'm thrilled that I can sit on this committee as a staff resource, and I'm assuming that I am retiring in May, for those of you who don't know. Anna Marie, you might not know.
I heard that.
And so whoever replaces me, I assume and hope will also sit on this committee, or asked to sit on this committee. So our plan outlines how we plan to remove barriers in our building, our programs, and our services. It aligns with the municipality's accessibility action plan as much as we can and draws from the same research, but it addresses the library's particular and somewhat unique role. For example, providing quiet pods for neurodiverse users, inclusive programming, which recreation would also be doing, and adaptive equipment like the MedShed equipment loan program, other things, equipment that we actually loan and are considering loaning out that may have accessibility assistive purpose. So our plan was reviewed by the AAC, so in its previous iteration, and was given, we had some feedback, which I incorporated as much as possible, and then it went forward to our library board, who ultimately is the organization or the entity that's going to approve it. So our board has approved that plan, and it's now on our website. So staff very kindly included the draft version in your agenda, but the finalized, which was approved at our February meeting, is now on our website. So I can send you a link to that if you want to see the full and proper one. Yeah, so we have a plan. It's slightly different than the municipalities, but it is in alignment with the munis plan. And we have, and at the same time, we work with you and as much as possible on this committee, and with things like grant applications that we might be putting forward, which I will speak to in a moment, where we would ask the AAC to comment, give feedback, make suggestions, and also for you to be the vehicle by which you may receive feedback from the public that is about the library. In our plan, we've left ways for people to contact the library directly about accessibility concerns, but you may hear some of those concerns through this committee, in which case we hope you will pass those on to the library so that we can respond. So if it's all right with you, I will go on to part B.
Go on.
of my presentation, which is, there's a grant opportunity, which I think, Marnie will know about. The Rick Hansen Foundation has, in celebration of the 40th anniversary of Rick Hansen's Man in Motion Tour, offered a grant program called the Barrier Buster Program. And it offers 40 grants across the country of up to $40,000 for accessibility improvement projects. So the library is going to make an application in partnership with BIM, because BIM is the owner of our building, to request a number of items that we hope we can move forward with. So the library had an audit done of our building in early 2025 by Spark BC. And that audit had a number of recommendations, which has also informed our plan, those short-term priorities. So there's sort of three things we were going to focus on in this grant application. It's to upgrade 2 washrooms, one that is ostensibly currently accessible, but had some issues identified in that building audit. Things weren't quite right, bars were in the wrong angle, some things were a bit further away than they should be. So we'd like to remediate those issues and make that washroom meet the recommendations that were given by Spark BC. We have another washroom that we would like to make that is currently not accessible at all, and we'd like to make that as accessible as we can. It is too small of a space to completely 100% meet the guidelines that are identified without blowing out walls and changing the physical infrastructure of the library's building. The other 2 things that we're looking at are safety measures and wayfinding improvements. So Spark BC identified that there were some issues with signage. We'd like to have some better, more visible, high contrast signage with Braille on it. And I spoke to Alex today about the process of ensuring that we get feedback on how to do that. And I will speak to Jillian Drake, who's managed that for your new building here. And then the third thing is an accessible computer workstation. So we want to change one of our internet access workstations into a more accessible workstation with a motorized desk that will lift up and down, different screens, different keyboards, different sort of mouse and trackball. Alex and I spoke today about a couple of other ideas that might be able to go into this application to bump us up closer to the actual 40,000 if we can. And so we're just getting some numbers on that to see if we can add in a possible Braille output device and some further, what was the other thing? It was the crosswalk, which we may, yes, whether we could also include tactile, what's the word for it? Tactile
walking.
Yeah,
meters,
yeah,
otherwise known as Twizzies.
that's right. Twizzies at the crosswalk that comes from the ferry offloading over across Cardina over towards the bus stop. So a bunch of smaller things that we're hoping we can put in to provide a whole bunch of improvements to the library and the surrounding area. So one of the things that this grant is, the deadline is March 15th. So I'm working to try to get some costing from suppliers, costing from a contractor, and get my budget done. And then a letter of support is also required. So the thing that I'm bringing forward to this committee is a request for a letter of support from the AAC committee for the grant application. And I've sent a draft of a letter that I'm hoping someone would be able to sign. Alex has also offered letter of support from a secondary outside organization, which would also be very helpful.
What about a letter of support from the municipality?
Well, I think, yeah. I know your council meeting's Monday. It's pretty
Yeah.
short notice.
Yeah, but
I think we could still do it.
the late items agenda haven't gone out yet, so it's just a matter of adding something to that.
I mean, the AAC is a committee of the municipality, but so the more the better.
As to a letter from the AAC, I would like to put forward a motion. That we issue a letter. On behalf of the AAC in support of this project. What would be the best way to handle this, Steph?
That's fine. That's a
Can
good
I give you the
recommendation.
wording for the motion, or
I can work with that. I'm wondering if Nick has a question more.
I was just gonna second,
Okay.
Archer's.
That the accessibility advisory committee.
Provide a letter of support for the library for the application for the McCann Foundation grant.
before we go into the discussion of this item, I would like to get the motion on the floor so we can discuss it.
Okay.
Do I have somebody who can move the motion?
You can move it.
Kathy's wondering.
Okay, Kathy.
Are you ready for discussion?
Not yet. I have moved it, but I need a seconder.
I can second it, but I do
Okay.
have some discussion.
Sure. Well, let's go second, and now let's have some discussion.
Go ahead, Kathy.
So I was just curious, Tina, did they give you any suggestions about hearing accessibility?
There were a number of suggestions of samples of projects you could apply for, but they were all very open-ended. You could do anything from a playscape to a washroom upgrade to a ramp to pretty much anything that improves accessibility.
Well, I have to compliment you on the great progress I've seen in the library in terms of having the loudspeaker and encouraging presenters to use captioning. And I think, I like all the suggestions about vision and mobility, but if you have more money, you can ask for something. This weekend, we had a demo of Auracast in the theater, and there were people in the audience who were able to actually connect their hearing aids. And that comes in at a price tag of about $5,000. And it is something we could put in the med shed for people to use at a variety of venues and for you to use in the library. So just to kind of round out the different types of disability, if you're up for that, I just got a quote on it. And I think you've done a great job, on that front. And I think the space in the library where there are public meetings is a really important part of the library, and making it hearing accessible would be great too.
Kathy, could I ask you to send both Tina and myself that quote?
Yep, absolutely.
I was just gonna ask the same thing. The grant does not require quotes for single items under $10,000, but I think it's helpful to include quotes to show that the equipment you're considering, what it's costing is. It certainly, and it allows me to put it into my budget. So thanks for that
Okay.
suggestion.
And Tina, that was the Auracast technology was one of the ones where I said there was, other devices we could consider as part of that
Yeah,
amount. That was one of the ones that it referred to.
okay.
I'm not. It was a bit garbled what you said, but I'm assuming that I'll just send it to you and we can talk about it.
Yes, thank you. There are many things that could go under this grant. I'm under a short timeline trying to choose things that are somewhat low-hanging fruit and fairly fast for me to get quotes and information on so that I can submit it by next Friday.
Yeah.
But it sounds like the Auracast is fairly simple. And if you have a quote, Kathy, that would be helpful.
I will send it. And just in case people don't know, this is like a revolutionary version of Bluetooth, so that anybody with a hearing loss can connect no matter what kind of hearing aid they have, or a phone, or with a headset. And so it's something you could plug into any system that has a PA, and it's a transmitter and some receivers. And there were people in the audience who were really impressed with it. So I think it's the future, and what better place than the library to kick it off?
I think I had a chance to try it out myself, and for the first time in a long time, I was able to hear every word of a presentation, which was That's hard to put words to. But yeah, it's definitely not underselling its revolutionariness.
Thank you.
We need to vote on the budget.
Yes, we do. Is there any other discussion on the motion before I call the question? I'd like to call the question. All in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. You're unanimous.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I am going to run away. Thank you so much for passing that, and I truly appreciate the letters of support. And normally I would stay for a full meeting. I would not run away. Thank you.
And a big thank you on behalf of this whole committee for all the work you put in.
You are very
making these
welcome.
plans reality.
Thank you. It's been my honor. Thanks so much.
Okay, everyone.
Thank you.
Point four.
We're
Up next. Your first presentation to this committee. Great.
No pressure.
No, I mean, we don't bite. Okay, I can't speak to these new members. But
No,
the rest of us.
Right, so, our accessibility action plan, our first, we adopted, just last year. You go through it, first thing you'll see is the table of contents. Next thing would be our message from mayor and council, thank you, everyone for their contributions. Then it goes through the accessibility advisory committee and how the plan, how the accessibility plan was developed. Then it goes into our territorial acknowledgement and just a little bit about Bowen Island. Then it goes through the provincial and national context of accessibility advisory committee and the accessibility plan. And then just goes through a methodology of how accessibility plan was developed and the findings from the engagement. And then it goes into our 3-year accessibility action plan with all the 6 categories: transportation, built environment, service delivery, governance, information communication, employment, volunteering, participation. Goes through the teacher categories and as well as just action items and potential advocacy. So transportation, built environment, service delivery, information communication, volunteering, and employment. And yeah, then it concludes with implementation and just a quick conclusion on like community's priority items.
Thank you, services. You're right, you know, like here. Yeah.
Ah.
Can I get a time check? Mr. Washington, number 4. Christina, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, I'm gonna share it here. Yeah, okay, let's see what this looks like.
Do you know what? I see, Christina, you're on the Zoom. If you just actually open your camera, then we could lip read you. Because the voice is not coming through great, but I think speech reading would be great. And I am watching the captioning. So I'm kind of trying out what it would be like for somebody with hearing. Oh, no, beautiful. I can see you.
So just to be clear, Kat, you can see the captioning.
Yes, I turn it on from my side so I can see the captioning. But like, I really don't know who just spoke previously, but if that was seeing Christina's face, you know, I have a feeling of I know who's talking. So that really adds a lot of good communication.
Thank you, Kathy.
Well, that's good to know, because one of the things we hear a lot of complaints about is that the people that are watching Zoom can't see the presenter.
It's true.
Well, now I can see Christina. and it really makes a big difference. So that's a good approach.
Okay, all right, well, I'll try to speak of, you can read my lips. So this is just a fairly quick presentation as we don't have too much time, but I did just want to introduce you all to the implementation strategy for this accessibility action plan that you have all helped to facilitate or are now helping implement. So we'll be looking at our strategy, our progress to date, as well as our next steps. So overall, our implementation approach is really intended to be embedding accessibility into BIM's operations planning and decision-making across all departments of the organization. So not to just include this as standalone projects, but rather actually integrate this into how we do. So the accessibility plan has been shared with all department heads to be able to integrate your recommendations into their work plans for this year as they're able to. And this is including into their current work plan or future work plans, because as you'll know, a lot of these projects were actually quite large and we would require quite considerable investments. So we wanted to ensure that we had a flexible and phased approach, because we did have some near-term or immediate actions that we could implement. And I'll be speaking about some of those that we have made progress on so far, as well as some longer-term goals that we know are going to take more substantial investment. So then, therefore, we didn't have any fixed timelines on the accessibility plan itself, because we were recognizing all these financial investments and the operational as well as the asset lifestyle constraints. So we know that some of these things we might actually only be able to implement when we're replacing an item and we can choose a more accessible, friendly option. And so by nature, we have built accountability into the process. The Accessibility Advisory Committee decided when that first plan was designed that we were going to be doing an annual review. So by nature, then we'll be looking at things about how we can improve or add or revise as necessary. So here we're just looking at what progress has been made to date. So the Accessibility Action Plan has been shared with all department heads, and certain work items have been captured and included and are brought forward if there is additional budget considerations to council in this budget iteration, as well as ones that could actually be included without necessarily considerable additional cost. So some of these early actions that we've been able to implement over the last 6 months include, actually Councillor Jurgensen and I presented the Accessibility Action Plan and how BIM can support businesses on the island to be actually implementing some more accessible elements into their own practices at the Community Economic Development Committee Business Summit back in November. We've also, as I mentioned earlier, one of the items mentioned was to improve audio-visual system upgrades in council chambers, as we've been speaking about. So we submitted a grant proposal that was successful to Spark BC. As Tina mentioned, it's the same funder for the local community grant for $25,000. And that, in addition to the funds that were committed by council, enabled us to actually move forward with the most accessible proposal that we received. And that's going to be including the Auracast system that we've been discussing, as well as some receivers. So even those members of the public or council that might not have compatible devices themselves, they can actually just be able to plug in their own headphones into a receiver and be able to hear council meetings as well as committee meetings, anything that's hosted here for BIM. Additionally, we are making action right now on the transportation advocacy piece about exploring a business case for a community shuttle donation, seeing if there's an option to actually be meeting not only the community needs for more transportation on island, but specifically those who have accessibility challenges. And that's something that we're actually looking at now with COBD as well as other nonprofit organizations on island. And finally, as I mentioned, the integration piece organization-wide. So the accessibility plan itself, we have staff. We have this embedded in a new staff role, which is a strategic initiatives officer that's before council right now for consideration in this new budget. It's considered as a responsibility to assist across departments the implementation, not only of the plan, but accessibility initiatives in general. We've been pursuing several accessibility grants to be able to further not only the actions that have been identified in the accessibility plan, but also those that are strategic initiatives that we can incorporate accessible pieces into. And then we also have a brand new accessibility feedback mechanism that's being integrated into the new public works and facilities workflow. So this is through citywide, where it's going to enable staff and the public to be able to directly incorporate, submit feedback, submit service requests, needs in the community that pertain to accessibility that will actually be integrated into the workflows. So we can ensure that these needs are being recorded and they're being seen by the folks who can take action on them. Right. And next steps are really focusing on consultation. So like has been mentioned earlier, we'll be bringing staff and council accessibility considerations to yourselves for review and consideration feedback based on your expertise and your lived experience that we really would require your input on. We also want to use AAC feedback and community input to inform ongoing implementation updates and reporting. And like Tina was mentioning as well, like if there's any input that you receive or think of from the community that you can bring forward through your roles in the accessibility committee, we really would appreciate that, as we know we need to hear from more folks as well within the community. The advocacy piece, we want to continue to promote awareness and accessibility, or awareness of accessibility benefits, not only for our community members, but also for businesses and the benefits that they can incur by incorporating accessible elements. And then we'll be continuing with these municipal supports. So something else that we're in the midst of updating right now is a new website for the accessibility committee. And that's going to be including grants and other resources that community members, community groups, and community businesses can access. And we'll be continuing to offer support to businesses as they need it through COPD. I know there is also additional guidance on accessible design and communication best practices that are available to local communities or to community businesses as well. And that's it for here. Basically, we're just trying to ensure that we're able to continue integrating accessible elements and the action plan as we're able to on an annual budget basis.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the strategic initiative officer? Councilor Morris?
Several actually. So I'm looking at number 4 and number 5. I'm assuming you.
Sorry, of the accessibility plan or
the plan.
Who is speaking?
It's
Currently, council has the floor.
Okay, so. Yeah, no, the implementation and monitoring is only a paragraph, isn't it? I'm talking about number 4 and 5 under built environment. Page 14. So we're in the middle of budget process.
Mhm.
So it's talking about advocating to council for budget support for better trail maintenance. So have you been talking with Carlos Goose about that?
So these are all the department heads that they're responsible for incorporating these elements into, actually, we are looking into this one. Actually, I forgot to put that in there. So there is actually a grant that I worked on with Carla for accessible elements into about naming beaches and
Yeah.
trail access with some braille components, actually.
So that was, I think, one of the others, yeah.
So that is something, sorry, there's been more.
Yeah, because I guess it's gonna come through her, the money to do this is gonna come through her budget.
That's right. So there
Yeah.
wasn't, we're working on a grant actually, so I don't think there might be anything in.
Yeah, so Steve has just, and the same with the number 6 for dragging the logs away from the trailheads and stuff.
Mhm.
That's going to be in her budget as well, probably.
So these aren't all necessarily going to be in this year's budget. It's going to be depending on work manageability as well. So because Carla is sharing staff as well with Public Works, they have to decide what are their priorities for the year ahead, what's going to be feasible. Because that's the other thing too, is that just because this is a recommendation from the accessibility committee, it might have to be interpreted by departments and workflows to determine what's feasible for them to implement and how. It might look a little bit different. In that case, they would come to the accessibility committee to ensure that it's meeting their need. It might might look a little bit different. So just as things are listed here, doesn't mean that's how they're going to be directly implemented, and there's no timeline there directly expired.
So they haven't been prioritized as to which ones you would like to do first and then second and third and.
No, this list is from the accessibility committee, not from, like, it hasn't been prioritized.
But the accessibility committee has prioritized them and said, we'd really like to see this done first and that done.
No.
second."
Not specifically, no.
Yeah. And then I'm just looking at the beach access one. I mean, those logs are gonna wash up every year, so that if that is something that's to be done, there's gonna have to be an annual budget for that.
Yeah, and that's part of the consideration. So that's why it's up to the department heads to look at the things that have come under their department and to prioritize based on what's feasible and what kind of concerns they would have around trying to implement some of these things.
Yeah, make a
Yeah,
comment.
also Kathy set her hand up, so maybe we could, if you've got a bunch, Allison, we can take turns a little bit.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's
All
fine.
right, so I'll go to Kathy next, and then I'll go to Nick.
I just wanted to share with everybody that the Muni actually gave Sky a grant because we have been running a series of seminars, which is finishing in March, on healthy aging. And the next year's seminar series is going to be on age-friendly communities. And the Muni gave Sky money so that we could hold those in the theater and share them with people. So they will include many topics. So basically, age-friendly includes many topics which are in the report. And age does not refer to, people turning 65. Age is a process. So it's basically open to anybody, but there will be Sky attendance, I think, in force. So something like transportation, which is one of the topics, is something that will probably come early, and we would like to share, the knowledge that we're bringing to the public to the staff and figure out a way to share that. So exactly how that can happen, it's an opportunity we can take advantage of. And Christina and I have had some chats about that, but it hasn't, it's not fully formed. But I just wanted to make everybody aware that this is a chance to take some of the topics from the accessibility plan and to actually have some discussion with the public and to kind of spread the word.
Hey, thank you. Nick.
I just wanted to mention, I believe that during the discussions last year around the particular item of the dragging of the logs aside,
Yeah.
I believe that is done already by the Muni as part of their normal process on at least a couple of beaches. That's my impression anyway.
I think they do try to keep some accessible, and it is like what Councillor Morris said, they do wash up every year, so it is.
But I think they do it each spring.
It's every 2 years, they're doing at least September more, it's every 2 years.
Does September more?
That's the one I know is every 2 years, I'm assuming they must run that same session.
Right, I'll just be mindful of the time. I think we have enough time to take 2 more questions. Okay, Maria?
And again.
There's no more questions.
No, I'm curious, because the work I do is mostly around people with not physical impairments, but with behavioral complexity. Is that, and I speak children because that's my profession, but I think it's probably extended to adults, and I'm just like wondering, and I'm not reinventing the wheel or anything here, but a lot of the accessibility projects that are being like focused on are about physical access, physical accessibility. But the majority of the people that I work with, the patients that I work with, are excluded from participating in anything because of their behavior. Because the behavior is off-putting to others, And so I just wonder if there is like clearly, 0.8, boarding pass for people with autism, but I feel like I wonder if there's any option or opportunity to probably even tiny things like adding signage around Grafton Lake Park. This is a behaviorally welcoming walk, that every behavior is tolerated and welcome, you know? And we could do very, very low financial, projects that could maybe like make Bowen a place where like people can bring their kids and not be worried about being told to be quiet, you know? Could we have an hour at the general store where people can come with their children with autism or with complex behaviors that they're allowed to yell and scream and no one's gonna care, you know? Like, could there be an accessibility hour already? Like, I don't know. But I just noting that a lot of these points are geared towards like physical accessibility, and the patients and people I work with are excluded based on behavior.
And that's why I'm super excited that you've joined our committee, because it's that kind of input that helps make this even better.
I'm getting you a heart right now.
Yes, as Councillor Jurgensen mentioned, you've identified something that's a big gap in our current plan, and that is something that we want to incorporate more of. So when it comes time to do our annual review, I think including more of these elements will be really helpful.
In the meantime, I think gathering up all the points that can go into an annual review would be great, because the more we gather ahead of time, the more prepared we'll be for that annual review.
Yeah, it should just be, sorry, but I'm a professor at UBC as well, so I have access to a lot of undergraduate opportunities, like, you know. So if there's ever any grants need to be.
Thank you, that's
They're
a very generous offer.
no, it's very easy. Very easy.
Yeah, we actually have one that I'm working on with Kathy that's involving the community health officer. That's not her title. But she's a community health representative from Vancouver Coastal Health that's helping with the aging friendly grant. And she's actually put her lead policy member of her team involved with this grant as well. So there's opportunities to work with either academia or with the health authorities, or with private organizations too that want to support this. Great.
Kathy, is that your hand from before?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, again, I don't see the face of who was just talking, and it's a new person, I guess, but, and I know it's different, but on that kind of invisible disabilities sort of idea, a dementia inclusive is a perhaps a similar sort of thing, where it has to do with behaviors and making people feel comfortable in the community. So that definitely is front and center, and we have had delegations on that, and that has been something that Christina and I have been talking about because of some age-friendly work that we're doing. So there may be some similarities, there may be differences, but I think it's not all physical. It's not all physical, and communication is also, very behavioral and attitudinal, as well as, the fact that eyes and ears aren't working. It's really the behavior and attitudinal that is the thing that we can get the most traction on.
Thank you, Kathy. I've always appreciated your insights on the dementia side of things as well, like highlighting that visible side to the disability spectrum, as well as the behavior side. Councillor Morris, did you have one more question?
Well, yeah, there's three things in here that seems to me would be absolute quick wins and would be really simple to do. And that's on page 28, provide persons with autism and neurodiversity onboard passes for vehicles boarding ferry. I mean, that would be so easy to do. And then another one is over here about lowering the height of the braille signage in the community center. Has that happened? I mean, we've had contractors digging holes in walls and moving things around for quite a while, so.
I think the challenge with that, to speak for that second one, the lowering of the signage, it is at a height where it's required to be by building code. So we actually would need a second set of signage that would appear lower down on the wall.
So the narrative is should get additional something.
Yeah, additional at a lower height. at least I had to check in with Lee, but I believe that was the thing that makes it not as quick of a win as initially thought.
And then the other was just to put in for the signs on doorways for houses for people, neurodiversity issues, so that if there was a call, then the first responders would know.
Mhm.
It was identified in that admin meeting yesterday.
For the admin department. Well, that's great.
It's good, more than one set of eyes then.
Okay, can I get a time check?
We're on 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, so I suggest we take a 5-minute recess.
Can I just add also for maybe for Christina to think about how do we record or keep track of the things that are just happening? So Lee has done amazing things, you know, like recognizing that we need a railing in the theater and recognizing that we need some priority parking. And, you know, those things are just happening in real time.
Yeah.
And I don't know how we keep track of them. But I think we have made a lot of progress that we should somehow keep track of.
Yeah, no, you're right. So these are being just kept track of ad hoc at this point, but the process that's being implemented with actually embedding it into facilities workflow and public works workflow is that there would actually be a service request and then a work order and then be completed. So that the whole point is that there would be a means of capturing that and recording and accountability in terms of who has it been assigned to, what's the next steps and the updates so that we can provide all of that instantaneously. And that's actually going to be rolled out this spring.
I do expect Planner Martin's, so I do want to make sure that we're back by 8:08.
I'm gonna mute the room.
I would also like to request, when everybody's speaking, when we do return, you can just, state your name before you're speaking. I would do the same.
Daniel coming in person?
As you.
Oh. We actually can't mute the room, so. Saying that you're gonna return. It just let me have a deco. That's like an autism deco has already been created by this autism family. And what needs to be released or. This has been mentioned over the.
Yeah, I think we've seen it. And
Yeah, we have
yeah,
that. It hasn't kind of been corrected. Yeah, so, yeah, this is really good. The conversation was about talking to BC Ferries about getting a little bit of awareness from their staff as. On that, in that form. And you're doing that at the same time?
Stupid question. If I go out, can I come? Or is it locked?
First off,
There's another one besides it.
I will do something for that.
I learned that the hard way too. And so the first thing I do when I come in is push the lid down. I'm not quite sure why they don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 Hey, open to book, my friend. Find the house.
Alex, we have the original garbage bin. I've been curious. I know.
Kathy, are you in Toronto?
Well, no, I spent all day at the airport and my flight was delayed and then it was canceled and then they rebooked me for tomorrow. But I got a whole pile of food vouchers and they are putting me up in a hotel. So I'm in Richmond.
Well, I saw the curtains in your background and I know Alex had said you were catching a plane, so.
No, I tried, but I'm glad I was just going to Toronto and I built in lots of fudge factor. So my meeting actually starts on Sunday, so I'm not in a huge panic, but there were a lot of unhappy people who, were trying to make connections in Toronto to go to Europe and South America. And
All sorts of.
it's like it all just blows up because Air Canada can't rebook, the connecting flights that go to other countries. And
Yeah.
it was an interesting experience, but I was in the air on 9/11.
Oh,
I
okay.
got diverted to Goose Bay. So after that, it's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It sort of set the bar pretty high.
Yeah.
So being in Richmond, it's not as exciting as being in Goose Bay for a week. Anyway, it was easy to I'm in your time zone, so that's good.
Well, that's good. You're not having to 3 hour difference.
Right.
2 hour difference.
Three
No, to
3 hours, 3 hours to Toronto.
Daylight saving time. They go on daylight saving time too, so.
Yes, but once we enter daylight savings time, we're exited again.
Well, that's-
Next year, yeah.
Next year, yeah, that's next fall, yeah. But that's one of those things I think we need to think about because how dark is it going to be when our kids are going to school in October and November and December and January and February? I mean, all those kids are gonna be walking on the road in the pitch black.
Yeah.
And do we really want that?
We also debate if we stay on standard time or we stay on daylight time, and the provincial government decide to go on daylight time.
Well, I think from some of the comments I've been hearing, it's better to stay on standard time.
I think they're doing it to go in line with, I think California, Oregon and Washington are.
No,
looking at the same
they're
thing.
not going. They passed it and they were gonna wait till those guys did it, and now he's jumped the gun and nobody else is doing it, so. They had something on the news tonight, I mean, the park at Peace Arch. One side of it's going to be it's going to be 4 o'clock and the other side it's going to be 3 o'clock, so. It's
It seems to be sort of a misinformed thing that all sleep is a gigantic health issue.
yeah,
And for children and for teenagers and for older people. And they basically made the wrong choice, according to all the sleep experts. So they did not make the right decision in terms.
I'm just trying to get us back on track. My apologies. It's 8:08, so I'd like to get us back on track with the meeting. I'd like to turn it over to Planner Martin for his presentation on the Seymour Bay land use bylaw amendment and rezoning application. I believe
there he is.
that he's joining on Zoom, correct?
Yes, he was on Zoom and there is, I think the applicant is in the Zoom room, but did not speak it.
Okay, so the applicant is here as well.
Yeah.
Okay. And who do we have representing the applicant with us tonight?
nobody,
Valeria Perez Melvito.
well, somebody Washington. Alex, it's not normal when staff presents for the applicant to present.
No, I understood.
Okay.
I'm just acknowledging that the applicant is here,
Okay, I thought you were saying representing him, so.
No.
Being able to participate.
not participating, just so that the room is aware of who's here.
Yes, we're doing that.
Daniel, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks so much, Alex, and thanks for the committee to have me here. So what I have for you tonight is I have a presentation that I will start sharing. I have a referral from council for a development application that would seek to change our land use bylaw and our official community plan for a proposed development at Seymour Bay. And I'll just check, are you hearing me okay in the room?
It is a little bit quiet, but you are coming through. Is there any chance of getting the volume boosted just a little bit, either at your end, Daniel, or this end, Steph?
It's,
Sure, we'll work on these. So the application where the area is, it's an area around Seymour Bay and centered around Seymour Bay Drive. It's shown on the map here, and it's located starting at the intersection of Seymour Bay Drive and Cowan Point Drive. And then as you go along Seymour Bay Drive, both north and south of Seymour Bay Drive, located sort of north of Beach Drive and the golf course clubhouse. And so what the proposal is to amend our official community plan and our land use bylaw to permit additional housing units centered, as I said, around Seymour Bay Drive. And what's showing on the screen is the applicant's site plan, which shows 6 different areas. And so in the application details, they show sort of the different programs that are proposed in those areas, primarily being that the areas north of Seymour Bay Drive, areas 1 and 5, are steeper sites that climb up the hill, so have less dense forms of housing. Area 2 that's shown there with a sort of more reddish color, having more mixed use and commercial uses, and then 3 and 4 being primarily residential, and then the area 6 being slated for potential recreation uses. And so the overall application is the applicant would seek up to 312 units in the whole Seymour Bay or the Cowan Point comprehensive development zone, which would be an increase from the 160 that are currently permitted. So the application seeks denser, more clustered housing in various forms and additional commercial floor area to create a viable commercial area. And so then the image shown on the screen is what's called a concept study of what it could look like standing at the intersection of Seymour Bay Drive and then Seymour Landing Drive, which is the proposed road going south or down from Seymour Bay Drive.
Sorry, Mr. Martin, are you able to
Yeah.
give a little bit more of a description of that image and what's contained within it for the
Sure,
public?
of course. So in that image, we are looking southeast. So looking out over the site, and it's showing sort of the proposed commercial area. So it's showing, I mean, in this image, it says gastro pub above with rooms, raised viewing plaza, sort of an outdoor plaza and people, and showing the Seymour Bay Drive road continuing along on the left side of our image, and then on the right, the Seymour Landing Drive coming down. Okay, and then next I'd like to go over, and especially this, because I think this is my first referral application to this committee. So going over just the process of how a rezoning and an OCP amendment application moves through council and its deliberations. So an application is introduced to council, and that happened for this application in, I think in December is my memory, or January. Anyways, and then we were referred to committees. So it was referred to a number of committees. So it was referred to the Advisory Planning Commission and the Parks, Environment, Climate Action Committee. It was referred to a nonprofit housing society called Birch that we have a partnering agreement with, and it was referred to this committee. And then what happens is I take all of that feedback and I bring that feedback back to council in what we call the results of referrals. And then if an application proceeds, then council directs staff to prepare a bylaw for first reading or bylaws for first reading. And that's the bylaws that would enact the actual changes to our official community plan and our land use bylaw. And then those bylaws, after given first reading, are then referred to the Islands Trust. And typically then they're referred back to committees and to the public for information meetings before coming back with any feedback on the bylaws for second reading with council. And then a public hearing is held, which is the formal sort of hearing before council when everyone is notified and has a chance to speak on the bylaws to council before, and then council would give the bylaws a third reading. They would be sent for Islands Trust for approval before then coming back to council for adoption. So the main takeaway from that point is just that we are early in the process, and that typically what we would see is that we would look for committees to give initial feedback and recommendations at this stage, but with an understanding that we would visit them again with bylaws at first reading and a second chance to consider an application. Okay, and then in this slide, I'm just talking about general, this is the sort of the detailed zoning changes that they're seeking. So amended what's called Area 9 of the Cowan Point CDA, or Comprehensive Development Area, to permit additional commercial recreation uses So some of the uses, daycare use, full retail use. So currently the Cowan Point area has allows a subset of retail uses. And then the recreation facilities that's in that area, 6. To permit increased commercial spaces, so increase the floor area. Increase the number of guest house bedrooms that are permitted. So the zone currently permits 20 and they would seek to increase that to 30. And then the big number being to increase the number of primary dwelling units. And so in this case, specifically in area 9, which is a subset of the Cowan Point area, it would increase from 48 to 200. Okay, and then in coming to this committee, I was trying to think, what would the committee want to provide comment on, or and so often other committees will look to sort of plans or bylaws or policies that we have that sort of guide what we look for in applications. So I've just pulled on the screen here, you'll recognize 2 of the policies from the Accessibility Action Plan. So the first one being in your built environment section, and it talks about support the creation of affordable housing options on Bowen Island. Persons with disabilities are among the hardest hit by housing affordability challenges, often the most at risk of losing housing or not obtaining it. And then in your section on built environment advocacy, you talk about encouraging builders and architects to design homes with wheelchair accessible ramps and openings through education and communication. So those are 2 that I just pulled that I thought, okay, those seem relevant for applications that talk about built environment and housing development. And then I'm just closing. This is just the council direction that was given at the meeting that we went to, where they referred it to this committee and others for recommendations, and reported staff to or directed staff to report back. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and I will turn it over, Alex, to you, Chair, for any questions that the committee may have.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. And just for context, this is the first referral that this committee has received. Would you be able to describe to us where this development is taking place in relation to the other major centers of Bowen Island and how it is currently connected, as well as what it seeks to change about Bowen Island? As I understand it being a fairly substantial development, there's talk of its potential as a center of transportation or center of trade on Bowen Island.
Sure, that's a
Sorry, I should
that's a
probably ask
great-
those one at a time.
Sure, that's okay. I mean, I think those are great questions in terms of centering us. So the Cowan Point development, and especially the development around Seymour Bay, since its inception, I think has long been sort of slated for development of almost a secondary center on Bowen. And Councillor Morris probably knows the history better than I do, but so in terms of its current zoning permission to be that sort of 160 units, it's quite a significant development on Bowen. And the developer has been sort of essentially, over the last 20 years, slowly developing portions of it as they get down closer to Seymour Bay Drive and around the golf course, where the sort of where the current zoning envisions multifamily and commercial development to some degree. And one of the things that they have spoken to in their application is just one awareness that given the cost of land development on Bowen, just essentially the price points that their single family homes come out at, and the type of buyer who's able to purchase homes in their development has changed since they started developing 20 years ago. That we all know increased prices of land costs and development costs and building costs, that they're significantly more expensive. And often the desire for buyers have for them are for things at lower price points. And that one of the ways that they can do that is seeking more attached to multifamily housing. And also with that, it's their recognition that the land that's proposed in the application is land that is adjacent to roads that are built and adjacent to servicing that's already in the ground and can be developed relatively quickly and easily. I know in a site visit we did with the Parks and Trails Committee, the applicant was speaking to, some of their original goals would have been to develop a site that they own closer to the cove that they call the Shire, that's sort of above Lee's Automotive, below Rivendell. But there's challenges with servicing capacity in Snow Cove. And so instead they're looking at doing that increased development at Seymour Bay where there is capacity in their servicing in the sewer and water available there. And something else they spoke to on our site visit was just that doesn't show up as well in my presentation, but essentially given the land below Seymour Bay Drive as it falls south towards the golf course lends itself to development that we see like in Artisan Square, I think, where you end up with buildings that have two different levels of the building. So it's, in essence, you confront Seymour Bay Drive at grade entrance, and then you confront a lower access point, essentially a story below, and you can end up with grade entrances on two levels. So it's a way to provide way to sort of try to build in that accessibility into the built environment and use the changing grade of the land to benefit that. And sorry, Alex, I don't know if I fully answered your question, but
The first question, yes. The second one is just what its connectivity to the rest of the island. As I understand it, that does not currently exist on a transportation route. And it's also possibly the site of the Circle Ferries landing. Is that correct?
yeah, so it's correct. It's not currently on a bus route. There's no bus that comes down County Point Drive. And yes, but it would be adjacent to the passenger ferry that's sort of been discussed as its landing site, although not, yeah, obviously not confirmed at this point or not, established, but yes, as a planned connection route.
All right, thank you. I'd like you to open it up to the rest of the committee for any questions. Kathy, I see you put your hand up there. Why don't you go next?
So, thinking of this from some of the discussions we've had with the older adults, transportation, as soon as you start talking about housing, transportation becomes an issue. So I think that just came up. So if people do not have cars, could they get there? Could they live there? So that's an important point. I think the other spaces that you talked about, what I'm hearing is there could be some housing options. And I think there is a perception amongst the older adults that people would like to have more housing options for older people who have become single. And they would like to remain living independently in their own place, but in a communal setting so that they can share resources and have people around them who could, do meals and different activities and provide some support. So, if you want to think about age-friendly or dementia-friendly, there are guidelines that I can share with you, and I think that would be really attractive if there were housing options for people who were looking for. You could think of it almost something like an older person's equivalent to a student res, and then for the commercial point of view, how accessible is that? So stairs and steep climbs is going to be a problem. So and sound, it's not just about mobility, it's also about acoustics. So if you want to have spaces where people are going to congregate, you just can't have a lot of glass and concrete or nobody's ever going to be able to hear anything. So anyway, interesting things, and I'm happy there's consideration of accessibility.
And part of this can be in a referral back to council and, in a response to the referral from council. Part of it can also be directed to the developer as well. Should they, as I know there's a representative here from the developer, if they would like to get in touch with some of that information as well.
So there are great guidelines that I can point you to. So, we don't have to start this from scratch. We just make the resources available.
Thank you, Kathy. Does anybody else have any questions? Mr. Martin?
Well,
there's those two sections in the plan. It's Allison speaking. Two sections in the plan. In our accessibility plan. And that Daniel had up on the screen. So I noticed in looking at the sketch of the public area that it appeared that there were stairs and things going up to it and things like that. So comments would be more appropriate to say areas be accessible by sloped ramps rather than stairs and things like that, so that. So I think the second policy said for the architects consider accessibility issues in designing of houses. They should also consider accessibility issues in the design of the public spaces and public buildings.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Anna Maria.
Yeah, Anna Maria talking. I don't know if you can hear me. Again, taking it to the other end of the age spectrum.
No, I love it.
I'm curious. So, and again, new to this, so interrupt me or redirect me. Many more houses are planned to be built. The goal is to have them more family centered. Questions are around, and if they're like, where do people put their kids in daycare here on Bowman? Like, and I know that they're planning on putting a daycare, but is it gonna be, like, what is the consideration in terms of low cost daycare, in terms of daycare that's actually accessible to people, single parents that are working? Hours of the daycare, hours of the function, do we have the school infrastructure to then actually take on all of the kids that potentially could be coming in this new housing? And again, in terms of it being available for children with complex behavioral needs is the way I kind of think about it, like what are our thoughts around inclusivity? And I think like lack of public transport to a location is a huge barrier. That's gonna select from population that has access to things that many people don't have. And then just a quick comment, like potentially in the note, in the accessibility framework, it could be not just people living with disabilities, but people caring for people living with disabilities might be, or co-living or whichever. It's not just the person with a disability or the person that is doesn't have the supports. But it should just be more inclusive.
I will go with Margaret first, followed by Kathy, followed by Nick, but I also did want to signal to staff in the room that I will be leading on you guys, since this is our first referral to help draft the response from this committee back to. So, Marty?
Thank you. I wanted to raise a point for the idea that came up in the documents, I believe, about aging in place, and in terms of creating built environments that will allow people to do that. It has to be essentially all units of the space. So for example, if it was an apartment, you'd want to make sure that all the units were built to be accessible or adaptable. And that's, there are standards for that. CSA has a standard, the Rick Hansen accessibility that I mentioned earlier. So requiring something like that would be something we could consider. And also just to say that I noticed a lot of mention of townhomes in the built form, which are really poor for aging in place and general for accessibility because of the stairs. So I think if we're considering an increase in density as for these other benefits, that we could ask for increase in accessibility and adaptability for those housing spaces so that we are creating spaces that are available for the longer term.
Thank you. And before we go to Kathy, Mr. Martin, is there the possibility to provide the feedback that most townhomes are, 2 to 3 levels stacked on top of each other, and then you got another one beside it, another one beside it. I have seen out there a different form where you have that special grade where you're fronting on one side at grade and fronting in the back side at a different grade because of natural slope. To provide some feedback to the effect of a different form of townhouse where it's all one level. where some is stacked on top of the others just to take advantage of that natural grade.
Ground
And then the additional
oriented
stairs.
entries.
Yes, ground up, exactly.
Great.
Yes, I mean, sorry, this is Daniel. I think that is possible. Like, as I said, when we were on the site visit, that was something the applicant was pointing out directly, was just the effect of the grade to make that possible in terms of essentially how many parts of the site were essentially that, like, you know, 1 story of elevation difference made it possible to have a top floor that you entered off grade and a bottom floor you entered off grade, and you could have, you know, then that setup.
Immediately it comes to mind that that would be a great way to have like a unit on the top and a unit on the bottom, rather than having 2 units side by side. Just mean an elimination of a lot of stairs. Kat?
Kat has her hand up.
Oh,
But we also just Nick.
I'm gonna go with Kathy, Jessica, Nick.
Okay, so just 2 quick points. I'm thinking of some of the talks we've had about dementia inclusive, and they actually have, you know, preferred models where the houses for the older people are small and they are adjacent to spaces like children's daycare. So it isn't like you put the old people here and the kids there. We do want to have intergenerational spaces. So I think we're on the same wavelength. It's not an either or. We can have really great combinations of that. And the other thing, just to mention, is, you know, I have Fritz de Vries built my house, designed my house so that we could grow old there, and we have an elevator. And I don't think, you know, elevators should be ruled out. I can't believe, even though we don't need them because of we don't need wheelchairs right now, that is a huge feature of our house, because I never have to carry anything up and down the stairs anymore. So it's a real safety feature, and it's a great feature. So I think that's another thing that we need a bit more of on Bowen, because, you know, there's always going to be steep areas. So if there were at least some elevators so people could, you know, get to the other levels without confronting a lot of stairs, why not?
I think I'm gonna change the speak order here a little bit and go to Valerie first, and then back to Nick and Jessica.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jurgensen. Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to reiterate a point I made in the chat, just for the benefit of everyone who may not have been able to see it. I am a member of the consultant team that is representing the applicant, who is Bowen Island Properties. So I just wanted to start off by saying that, and I raised my hand because there was several excellent questions asked. I'm not sure if this is permitted in the formal process, so if that isn't, then please feel free to stop me. But I was taking great notes, and I guess I just wanted to first commend the Accessibility Committee for assessing this and having the venue for which this application can be referred for consideration of accessibility. I'd like to just reiterate a point that Daniel made, which is where we are at in the process. It is very early days in terms of what our application seeks as far as uses goes. It does include a daycare, as was stated. It does include the opportunity for independent and supportive living, thinking specifically for seniors, and you know, other uses that would support active living, community building, such as indoor recreation and outdoor entertainment facility, etc. So what I wanted to offer is those uses and the questions that come about in terms of how to support a daycare, for example. What we're seeking by including those things in the application is to open the door for this development to happen, to acknowledge that there is need for housing diversity, affordability, support for seniors and other members of the community that isn't currently present on Bowen. And so by including those things in the application, what we're looking for is planning permission to then be able to go out into the community to assess in greater detail how we accommodate the policies in the accessibility action plan as an example, where we are talking in more detail about development permits, building permits, so that we don't see stairs in plazas as an example. What's included in the application is basically a request to allow these things to happen. And then as a secondary step and through ongoing conversations with committees like yourselves, as well as the municipal staff, to be able to have those things sort of land as shovels get in the ground in the proper way. So just wanted to add that as a sort of framing for where we are in the process.
I'm glad to hear you say that. It often, like in most settings, planning at this stage really goes that much further towards what's gonna happen in the end. Where we're talking about costs and retrofits, so I really appreciate the team's attention to that detail. Nick?
Thank you. Nick speaking, I was happy to see in the referral documentation on page 33, last paragraph, which said, including independent supportive living with accessible units and seniors-oriented services. I'm hoping that accessible is spelled with a capital A and not just mistaken for affordable. Happy to hear about walkable, and I'm hoping the design allows for rollable as well. As I think Councillor Morse made reference to. The timing is very nice that they are early in the process. Part of the accessibility plan, and Alex had touched on this, integrated, trying to share information with builders and developers for early changes to designs to facilitate, for example, turning around a wheelchair in a bathroom can make the difference between it being usable or not usable. And Daniel's reference to one of our items referred to ramps and openings. Specifically, we're talking about door openings being wide enough. Sorry, I'll face the camera. Wide enough to fit a wheelchair or a scooter makes it something where entry can be accessed or not. So very nice to have this referral at this stage, and hoping that you're able to build in some of those accessible items. And I'm sorry, I'm looking at you, but you're looking way over here at me, which is all very fun. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Jessica?
Okay, yeah, this is Jessica. First of all, I want to second the transportation being really important. For people who, want to go between, here, this part and that development there, whether they have family there or whether they work over there. The other thing is about public spaces and about like the commercial space. Sometimes people forget that people with disabilities work in these commercial spaces. So some people might be like, well, it's an employees only area, so we don't have to worry about this, that, and the other. But all like the commercial spaces, it should all be accessible, whether it's an employees only or, open to the general public, whatever it is, like it should be, like every business should have an accessible bathroom, every, and all areas of the business, because people work there too with disabilities, so.
Thank you. Do I have any more questions for the planner or need more discussion on this referral?
I'm sorry, I have my hand up.
Nick?
Nick, I'm not sure if this is an appropriate time to raise this, but we're here. So I'm going to, if it's all right with everybody. In reviewing the material part of this referral and the accessibility plan, and also looking at some council stuff, there was reference to narrow roads being something that the municipality might be looking at. And I am aware that somewhere in there we had a blurb to transportation item 5, widen sidewalks and road shoulders. So I am hoping that this development will integrate our hopes for having sidewalk or at least space for rolling items such as wheelchairs, scooters, and strollers that are actually off the road that is traveled by vehicles. Sorry if this is not appropriate at this stage, but I'm not sure where that item on narrow roads appeared, but I'm hoping, Planner Martin, that you can bear this in mind and help us to avoid a conflict between this group and another group that's trying to preserve vegetation.
Sure, and so it's Daniel speaking. I'll just say Seymour Bay Drive itself was designed, and when the developer built it, was built with space for a multi-use path along the south side of the road, so off of the pavement. And so that's something that was planned from the start, was that there would be a multi-use path along that stretch of Seymour Bay Drive, so that there'd be a rolling room that's off of the, like, separated from the cars.
Thank you. Jessica?
Sorry, my question was already answered. I ended up being addressed. So.
Is there any more discussion? Now we come to the point where we together what we would like to send back to council. This is where I will lean on staff to help us shape this.
I have a list. I'm a little bit shy about it, because I'm not sure what exactly is super relevant for the application, but we'll throw out what I've captured and maybe.
That's a good place to
staff-
start. Can I also, before we get into it, have you read the recommendation that we'll be voting on, because it's a very skeleton based one, and this will be what we end up with at the end of the night.
Sorry,
The recommendation,
I'll read it, but it's very rough.
It is
You guys
very
may have
rough,
to
yeah.
work on it.
no, understood.
Yeah, okay.
This at least gives us somewhere that we're kind of working towards, but at least,
Oh, I think that's just the framework, isn't it?
yes.
That the accessibility advisory committee recommended for the performance standard application. For example, 0079, the convention guidelines for building and effects on sound be consulted. That slope ramps rather than stairs be provided for both private, residential and public spaces, that entries be ground or oriented. That childcare provision be inclusive of children with special needs. Needs of people who support or live with people with disabilities are considered. That installation of elevators be considered, that transportation concerns are given high priority in amenity contribution considerations. That entries are wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs and scooters, and that roads are wide enough to accommodate rolling items, such as strollers and wheelchairs on sidewalks. Daniel, Xerxes.
So is the motion that we supported with these conditions?
I think that would be the idea, is that we can provide feedback to council saying we either support or do not support this application, and then we can attach conditions to that. That's my understanding, at least from how this works. It's my first time doing this as a chair. I've done it from the other side. Barney?
I'll just, if I can add to that, Alex, I'll just say, yes, some, like, we tend to look for committees to provide that, like, we support or do not support, but some committees don't, and that's okay too. It's fine to say, like, you know, we've done our initial review and we have comments, and if the committee doesn't want to go as far as to say support or not support, that, you know, that's your prerogative as a committee.
Took that out, it was.
Yeah, I think most that I've seen in the past, they don't support. They generally just provide input into what might improve the application.
Okay, so we won't have support or not support.
That might be a way to do this, that might improve the application, because I am not sure I feel comfortable requiring that each of these units have an elevator, because that launches the cost outside of affordability possibly. depending on the ground oriented, which might take care of that.
Or, you know, where elevators insert multiple units, there's so many different variables.
Yeah.
I have just a very question. No, we don't say special need finder.
Thank you.
We say support needs.
Thank you.
And then the transportation one, I think it needs to be more clear about transportation, not just roadways.
Thank you. Marnie, did you still have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. For the first item, could we please add CSA and RHFAC guidelines in addition to dementia guidelines? Or put it as a separate item, either one.
CSA.
CSA, Canadian Standards Association, and B652. And RHFAC. Thank you.
So that effects on sound is opinion there.
That could be moved to its own point.
So guidelines for what?
Yeah, just the dementia guidelines for building and CSA and RHFAC
Accessibility guidelines.
accessibility
that's right.
guidelines.
That's right.
Are we asking them to put in a bunch of stuff that they wouldn't normally in asking for the addition of those guidelines?
I don't think the building code doesn't require those guidelines, does it?
No, it is not.
It's beyond building code. This is Marnie speaking.
But it is, you know, good accessibility practice for building personal access spaces.
And there are many things that can be added that don't provide any additional cost.
It's about how to think about the design rather than necessarily ballooning the cost to six figures per consultation.
Correct.
I think this
Also,
is
they're considered.
early days. Consultants.
Just to note, I will definitely be doing some editing and all the paparazzi's gone. We just need to get like the main content.
Yeah.
Kathy's got her hand up, Marty is her.
All right, so Kathy with Marnie, but before we do, can we just add a point at the end of accessible wayfinding be considered?
Is that Alex?
Accessible
wayfinding being
Oh,
considered?
okay.
Or I guess I should say accessible wayfinding and signage.
Okay.
Kathy.
I just put the reference to the dementia inclusive guidelines. So if Steph wants to grab the reference, it can be put as a, in a footnote.
Okay, thank you. Marty?
That was from before. No further comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any?
Anna Marie. I have a very good question, and this is more of a question, but many of my parents, when children get bigger, and I don't know about like accessible toilets and bathrooms, but accessible change tables for not babies.
Yeah.
Like, which I think it would be really novel, the idea of accessibility across the ages. In terms of like a change table that can be utilized.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but ideally that would change tables could accommodate infants all the way to adults.
The problem is getting people up. Yeah.
Just take some ingenuity figuring that out, I suppose.
But that's what parents are talking about, that it should be like the built environment should automatically include, what it takes to change and 150-pound adult,
I mean, otherwise you're
You're putting it on the ground.
Exactly.
Yep.
Either
On
on
the
the floor
ground.
and on the floor of a vehicle, like it's just humiliating.
Yeah.
So you're talking about public washrooms?
Yeah, like if you're
Yeah.
building a public washroom that has a change table, it's amazing that there are, I mean, it gets very, very complicated, but if we're aiming for the best practice, there'd be an option for like dignity, I guess, for bigger size people that need to have an accommodation.
The one about entries. It's not just entry doors, it's doorways into rooms.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, so the doorways are wide enough.
All the doorways, not just the front door.
Yeah, the emergency exit, the janitor. Yeah. And there again, it's one of those things that was talked about earlier, things that come at very little cost. Little to no cost, putting in a 36-inch door versus a 28-inch door is not a big difference in cost, but makes a really big difference for users.
7, 8-foot doors like we did for my giant son.
8-foot doors.
Well, no, I think there's more than 7.
In height or width.
I
You grew them so.
I don't know where it came from.
So Danielle, like, so is this like, can we sort of soften the language to make people comfortable with things like elevators or like
Can we?
or I can do that actually, and I will send it around.
Could you just say consider the following in the very introductory paragraph?
Yeah, I think we could just say by considering at this stage, it's so early.
We can recommend they consider these changes.
Yeah.
Recommend that
In,
they're
or
proposed.
integrate these
Yeah.
items into their
Consider
plan.
the following, okay. Good, and just
that
as better.
okay?
I would be saying that it could be, I don't know how, because I don't have it in front of me, so I can't really wordsmith it very easily, but like the idea of like access to higher stories, whether it's just to use it, making sure it's all the ground, what do they call that, ground
At grade.
at grade, or elevators as a possibility, just like, yeah, or ramps, or just making sure that it's access, and you can have those, all those as possibilities within that. I don't know how to word that, sorry. I don't know if I'm making sense.
You are, I just, it's the very beginning of it,
It was that the, instead of saying elevators, kind of putting it all together with.
Oh, I see.
ramps,
Okay,
grade
so-
entrances.
Like options
Okay.
for, yeah, for access, and elevators could be one option, but where it makes sense.
Yes, because there's other creative solutions other than just elevators.
okay, installation of access.
So that way it doesn't look like, oh, you have to have an elevator in all of them, but it's like, well, where it makes sense, that could be a possibility.
There's a big difference between a 16-story building and a building that's 2 stories on 2 different grades.
Yes.
Oriented entries.
I'm just picturing a wheelchair access ramp for a 16-story building wrapping around the building.
Oh, the Guggenheim.
It's gonna be a thrill.
It's gonna be fun going down.
Yeah.
Especially when
A
it's icy.
slide, just have a slide.
No, slide isn't
Fireman
accommodate a
pole.
wheelchair problem.
That's true. It needs to be a wheelchair slide.
I think a floaty armchair.
That's a possibility too. We all too often fault on the accepted solutions. Sometimes a development needs a bit more of a creative solution. I mean, it's unique.
I think that's what we're trying to encourage, and especially when we're talking about access.
I think at this point, it's really to flag, the consideration of these things, but also to get that on council's roadmap. These are some of the things we're
Concerns in
looking
that
at.
one.
Look,
It's a work in progress.
yeah.
Oh, I did think of one more point we
All right, Jessica.
maybe want to consider, sorry. I should have waited for you to call me, I'm sorry about that.
I didn't see you, go ahead.
The accessible parking, I know it's been talked about here that there aren't enough
Right.
accessible parking spaces. I don't drive, so I didn't think about that one right away, but
We talked about that a lot in the cove here, where there's not enough parking that's accessible.
like for me, I need like buses and stuff, but for other people, yeah, the that's part of transportation too.
Okay.
All right, Kathy?
Yeah, just to kind of extend that, it's also, people who have, mobility scooters and a lot of strollers. So if people wanted to leave their device and go into a store, or could they go into a store with their device? So it's not just cars. Parking is for all of these other roly things too.
And that brings up a good question, and Kathy, perhaps you know the answer to this one, perhaps someone else in the room does. Is that it's not something I'm personally aware of, but is it a thing where people will park, say, a mobility scooter outside a store and go into the store without it? And then come back and that thing
Well,
still be there?
I think if there's enough room in a store, they probably would just kind of take their device in, but there isn't always room. And if I think about, like independent living buildings for seniors, when you enter into the dining room, people are often, they have like parking lots for all the scooters and wheelchairs in the front of the restaurant because people are sitting in chairs at the tables when they're eating their lunch, but their device is right beside them. Just like if you went into a restaurant with a toddler, you'd put the toddler in the little high chair thing, but then you've got your stroller that you have to park someplace. So
Understood.
you know what I mean? You have to
Yeah,
kind
that makes sense.
of have a combination of spaces.
Well, we're talking like adding to that, you could consider like covered area for parking spaces.
And bicycle.
Yeah. Accessible.
It's very interesting. I wonder if, like with bicycles, you just need that good chain system to lock it down. I mean, I know we're on Bowen, where it's likely still going to be there when you come back out, but
Bikes used to be a problem, missing bikes.
Yeah. Lady collected a lot of them.
Did this,
Okay, sorry, and just one quick thing, childcare provisions and potentially like if you want to add it in like
Yeah.
the playground. There's like amazing playgrounds that are completely different, but I'm sure that would try to be planned again.
Can I put that in the same one?
Yeah, I think so, like
I mean, that's-
playground would be like
accessible playgrounds, if they're planned from the beginning, don't cost that much more.
and accessible, but also from a sensory perspective.
Mhm.
For like for kids that need a sensory that different.
I think those spaces should be family. Think about families, not just the children. It's all the parents that are going to stand around and yap to each other and all the grandparents. And so it's like the playing part, and then there's the socializing part where the adults are using that space in a really important way too.
Like the benches, the tables, and so forth, where people would otherwise congregate.
I mean,
Yeah,
Just-
like I take my grandson over to Bix, and he has a great time playing, and it's like, where can I sit down while I watch him?
yeah, sorry, just like quickly, like a lot of parents with children with high support needs can't stand around while the kids play. They have to be right beside them on the swings, able to, it's different, it's different.
It is, and they're from a different perspective, like
Mhm.
I have nieces, when I take them out there, I can't stand back either and just be on the sidelines because they're so far away, like I would lose track of them. So I'm up there with them quite often, and so yet another instance of an adult being within a place game structure.
Daniel, did you say this is going to be coming back again after a round, or?
Yeah, I would expect we would come back after a first reading.
So these kind of nice sort of broader strokes, then I just, it's.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is where we probably have to kind of lock this in for tonight. And yeah, leave additional feedback for the next round. But if I can get Deputy Corporate Officer to just read what we have so far, and then we can vote on it as it is right now, unless there's any urgent changes that need to be made.
That the committee recommend, they want to consider the following. The dementia guidelines for building and CSA and RHFAC accessibility guidelines be consulted. That the effects of building material on sound quality be considered. Glass and concrete, for example, are not conducive to quality audio. The installation of access options be considered, such as elevators, ground-oriented entries, and ramps rather than stairs for both private, residential, and public spaces. That childcare provision and playground design be inclusive of children and families with support needs. that adult size, change tables be installed. Sorry, I might just. In public washrooms, that the needs of people who support or live with people with disabilities are considered, sorry. Okay, that entries and interior doorways are wide enough to accommodate wheelchairs and scooters. That roads are wide enough to accommodate rolling items such as strollers and wheelchairs on sidewalks. That accessible wayfinding and signage be considered. That concerns regarding the lack of public transportation are addressed. And that accessible covered parking for cars, bicycles, and accessibility devices such as scooters be provided.
What's the wayfinding and signage? I may have missed it.
That accessible wayfinding and signage should be considered. I've already said consider, I'll say installed. I said I will give us a review of that.
Sure. Is there anybody who'd like to put the motion forward to move this to the vote?
Nick, Kosarian.
Seconder,
Second, Marina.
seconds, any discussion, anything, I'd like to keep this to anything urgent needs to be changed, just given the time that this will be coming back.
Any discussion?
No discussion, I will go call to the question, all in favor, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please raise your hand and say nay. Thank you very much, Mr. Martin, for being here tonight, and Valerie for your input as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
I'm gonna turn it over to staff for the next couple items.
okay, so we try to do at the end of the meeting, if there are action items that are generated during the meeting, I like to do a quick review of them at the end, so there's no shock. The next meeting, but there were no action items today. And if you wanted to ask me any questions about the committee process after we've shut down. And although it's late, and I think the custodians, but you can call me, whatever. And we'll be meeting usually quarterly or on referral. So next meeting will be probably sometime in June. Daytime or evening? Evening.
Like, are we saying 6 or turning 7?
I think 7. Yeah, I did. Okay, I don't have anything else then.
Do we have a look to the deputy corporate officer to see if we have anybody here for question period? I'm gonna guess not.
Nobody here.
Yes.
I did want to ask one quick question before we adjourn, and that's just regarding this particular application. There was a site visit conducted where members from other committees were able to go and actually see the proposed development, and whether that's something we may want to consider for when this comes back to the committee. To do a site visit. Just want to gauge the appetite in the room for that.
Have we lost time?
Believe we've lost you.
I'd go along for company. I happen to be familiar with that area of the roadway. Because there's been classic car show on the side of the road out there.
Makes sense.
But I'd go along for company.
Anybody else has a strong opinion one way or the other about whether we should do a site visit?
I wouldn't go because for me, it's too early to really understand it. Once it's a little more, I have no context right now. So if it was in a later stage, yes, but
That's what I'm saying when this comes back to.
depends what stage it's in.
Maybe I'll revisit this question when we get back to, when we get it back, and then we've had Daniel support for that as well.
Kathy, ever did.
Kathy?
It's a slightly different topic. Is that okay?
Okay.
I just, meeting in June is great, but are we going to get emails or things that happen in between now and then? Because I have a feeling there's a lot of activity, and maybe there's a way to keep in touch in between the actual meetings.
And I think that's where the upon referral bit that Steph mentioned comes into play. So if there's additional, heavy activity that's going on in a specific area, we may call a meeting between now and June. Like just kind of the standing meeting.
Can I also, there will, I'm gonna speak for you, Christina, if that's okay, there will probably be, several projects or grant applications that, would benefit from the feedback of committee members. Just would like to have a friendly reminder to the group that we're not to engage in debate on the emails. That if there is a comments for staff, and I think a reply all is helpful, so we can see what is out there, but once it turns into discussion, then we're gonna need to take it online at point for
Go to a meeting.
transparency in government, yeah. Yeah. But there will be those email opportunities, is that correct?
Yeah, so as things become, on people's work plans, especially once budget's approved and some projects move forward, there might be opportunities for feedback from the accessibility committee. And if it's something that might be fairly quick, if I can send out an email and if folks have an opportunity to review that and provide input by email, that would be great. As Steph said, we don't want to get into debate and discussion through email because that is meant to be in an open forum. That's why these meetings are recorded and they're publicly available. So it's right now, I don't see anything on the horizon. I am working with Kathy on something that we're incorporating accessible elements into, but it's actually intended to be more of a community center, rec department, council strat plan grant. I don't see anything on the pipeline right now that needs to come back. Actually, the one thing though that we will be inviting folks with hearing and vision challenges is to test the brand new audio system as we install it. So you'll be part of our guinea pigs if that's okay.
Make sure you have someone on Zoom too.
Yes, exactly. We'll have someone on Zoom. So we'll have new speakers, we have new displays, and I have invited on your behalf and said that you would be part of our testing process with the vendor. So that would be within the next month or so. So whoever's available, I'll give you lots of time, but right now we're still waiting for the equipment to arrive.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
So is it fair to say if we have something exciting, if we send it to Christina, or if she has something exciting, that she can sort of decide who to involve, or if the whole committee needs to get involved between now and June?
Yeah, if there's work that's coming from staff that we need input on, or if there's just an opportunity that you want to share that's going on the island and that our communities might be interested in, we can share that. If that's something of interest to them, we share that kind of information through our.
Put it on our fancy new webpage.
Yeah, we can definitely put that on our fancy webpage. Meeting with Sarah about next week, so to get more content on.
Yay.
And finally, would like to just do a temperature check, make sure everybody's accessibility needs were met for this meeting. If you don't want to speak now, but do have some needs that aren't being met, feel free to speak to Christina or myself or staff. Outside the meeting, that's fine too. I'll let you take a lot of vulnerability to come forward with that. But just want to definitely make sure that this is a good accessible space and everybody's needs are being met through the process. But thank you once again, everybody, for being here. And
Thank you.
I'd like to move a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I need the motion first.
Oh, motion.
Next moves, looks like Maria, I see we're still good to second.